is it fair to say that people shouldn't be parents if they have strong community responsibilities? Like, they're always busy with saving people's lives or being a leader. Like, is it fair for them to
That's actually a good question. Is it fair? It's
Yeah.
not necessarily
It's not-
fair, but it is a job. It's like, you can't. It's not a question of should or should not. It's, if you're doing this, you have a moral responsibility to do this more than you do being a parent. But that doesn't give you a pass from parenthood. You've still damaged the child.
Alrighty, what up, you guys? I'm Brysin Smith.
And I'm Javin, and this is Etcetera. Yes. Oh my God.
Third time's a charm.
We've had to redo this episode. I think this is our third time.
Third time.
We're doing an hour long. We're talking about bad anime dads with ScarlettSenpaii again, of course. This is a subject that we've debated many a time on camera.
We do have to let the newcomers thank you for stopping by and to subscribe to us on all of our social media. We appreciate that.
Genuinely. And because we're so thankful, we're going to talk about your favorite anime dads. And mainly we're going to focus on like 5. We're going to focus on the top 5 that we think are the most controversial and or the funniest.
It'll be more than that, I'm sure, but yeah. Bad anime dads, good anime dads, even moms. We like the last time before our audio got messed up, we went into talking about good anime moms and bad anime moms. So we'll be going over all that. But the first one on the list again was Hohenheim's, which is what's his name from Full Metal Alchemist, their dad. And basically Scarlett likes this dad for some particular reason, and Javin and I don't.
Some particular reason. There's a lot of reasons.
But I feel like every time we have this conversation, we prove that he's a bad dad, and you still just.
I disagree.
I think you're just being stubborn.
Maybe.
She's
But
stubborn.
it makes for a good topic. And so we're going to talk about Hohenheim, Grisha Yeager from Attack on Titan. We're going to talk about Minato from Naruto. We're going to talk about just a couple of really bad ones, like Gaara's dad from Naruto.
He's definitely a bad dad. Every time I hear Minato, I'm like, I feel like there's not enough to put on him to label him as a bad dad. Which is honestly, when I looked into this, when I was looking up like bad anime dads just to see what people have said, he was on the list sometimes. He wasn't regularly on any of these lists that I've seen. But the one that was always on the list was Hohenheim, and he was always high up, if not number 1.
That's because his situation is complicated.
I mean, they're all complicated. All these situations are complicated.
Being a parent is a complicated situation.
I agree.
But there's no way you can really defend him.
I can, and I'll do it right now. What's your problem with Hohenheim?
Okay, so as I've stated several times in the past, I want to make a clear distinction between Hohenheim as a character and person versus him as a parent. His role in the lives of Ed and Al. So in my mind, he's actually a phenomenal person, one of the best characters in anime. He's genuinely interesting, genuinely fun to watch. He's struggled, he's got depth, and he's amazing in that regard. And he saved a fucking country. He also is a shit parent, specifically because he was not. He didn't. Okay, sorry, not a shit parent. He was a worse parent than he was a good parent. He was not there for his kids emotionally. He was not there, period, when, yes, granted, he was off saving the country, but his absence in his children's lives were noticed, they caused damage, and indefinitely formed Ed and Al's opinions about parenthood and about their own relationships. He permanently damaged them, and that was a decision he made and could have decided differently or handled it in a better way. That makes him not a good parent.
Not to mention, I remember last time we spoke about this, Marissa kept bringing up all the souls that he had within him and how he spoke to them each individually, and he couldn't do that to his kids. Like, it was like, so you spent all this time talking to all these different souls, but not once could you have done it to your kids.
Well, I think his relationship with the souls and his relationship with the kids are different. So my argument
they are
is
different,
that,
but still he should have a relationship with his kids.
But in a very specific way, and I agree with you. My argument is that he's more of a good dad than a bad dad, taking into consideration everything he went through. I think that if we're looking at his role as a parent solely, yeah, he wasn't a great dad. Like, no, he wasn't a very good dad. I do think
isn't that the argument though?
Yeah, but I'm arguing that he's more good than bad, and Javin's arguing that he's more bad than good. And the reason why I think he's more good than bad is because I'm taking into consideration everything he went through, his character in the show, and I'm also taking into consideration the consideration.
I do like that word, though.
Taking into consideration the relationship he had with them when they were older. And I think that he could have been there more, and yes, he could have talked to them more. He could have did a lot of things better. Like, he wasn't a very good dad, but I wouldn't call him a bad dad. And I would say because of the effort that he did put in, because of his thought process and the fear that he was a monster to his children, and that being a reason why he was distant with them, I think genuinely if he could have been better, he would have been better. And so to me, I don't think he's
but now we're talking hypothetical because any of these parents would have done better if they could have.
Yeah. But I think
of them, most of them.
Well, yeah.
Some of them.
Well, yeah.
And I think that
Hohenheim's one of them.
I think that Hohenheim's one of them because it's not just like
you're a sweet spirit.
It's not like he wasn't loved enough as a child, therefore he didn't love his children enough. It was a lot more complicated than that. A lot more complex. Like, he literally had a whole country of people like inside of his body, and he was trying to,
When did he first come up on the scene and see his kids while they were being grown? I forget. Would you guys remember that?
That was late. It was.
Well, yeah, I know that, but what was the reason why he showed up? Like, what was like, I'm here? Like,
no, they showed up to where he was.
Oh, they showed up to where that's what it was?
No, that's not true. So he left to go save the country, and he came back and found out that his wife was dead. I don't know. There was no specific, or I can't remember a specific reason as to why he came back. I think there was, but they didn't explicitly say it in the episode where he came back and he saw his house and he saw his kids for the first time in a long time. And
see, I want to know like what took him so long to get to that point to where it's like, what, I'm just gonna come.
Well,
home.
he was saving the country. He probably was just like, in the area, like he had to go back in that area home, or had the time somehow.
Terrible father.
Not that bad.
All right.
Terrible father.
Not that bad.
Here's a question. If you're a doctor, you're a famous doctor, you're a specialist, and there's types of surgeries that only you can do in the entire planet,
right?
And people are constantly being like, if you don't do this surgery, my son will die, my wife will die, all of these things. And that's an incredible responsibility to put on your shoulders.
Right.
But you have 2 kids. What job is more important? What job should he dedicate more time to? Should he even split up the time? Should it be 50-50, 25-75? Like, how much?
Realistically, if he is the only doctor in the world who could do these, it just depends on how much they need him.
Probably save that life, I'm thinking.
Right. But he has to do that all the time. Like, every single time he takes care of his kids, somebody's missing out on an opportunity to receive that surgery.
And they're
Those
gonna die
dads
as a
end
result.
up being bad dads because you see that even in real life with the dad that always has to go to work and he can't, like a Elon Musk, for example, or something.
True.
That's just to the extreme, but someone who's always busy.
Yeah, and my argument there is that, or not my argument, but my opinion on that is that he should save those lives, and
be a bad dad.
But is he a bad dad though? Like, I get that he's missing. I get that but like, bad specifically is a very specific kind of a word. Like, I'm sure he
he's
has
not a good
no
dad.
intention. Okay, so I feel like it's a spectrum. So that's where my argument comes from most of the time, is that I feel like it's a spectrum. I think at times you could be a good parent, and at times you could be a bad parent.
Well, how do you think the kid would perceive that if their parent isn't spending time with them? They're gonna be
kids,
like,
but kids perceive things. Kids are very biased. Like, they only care about kids care about the parent being present. That's what matters the most all the time.
That's what I'm talking about, though.
Doesn't matter the reason why they're not there. The kids just want them to be there, and that's not fair. That doesn't make someone a bad parent.
Isn't that the job, though?
That is the job as a parent, to be there.
Your job is to be there for your child.
Yeah, but realistically, you can't always be there, though.
And
that's not fair to judge somebody on their parenthood because they can't always be there because they're saving other people's lives.
It's not the quantity.
Maybe you shouldn't have kids.
It's the quality. Well, there is that question. But, like, obviously, real life is complicated. Sometimes you have kids and you can't really change that. But it's not about the quantity of time. It's about the quality of time. What are you doing to make sure...
I agree.
Hohenheim, okay, I'm about to make my opinion clear on Hohenheim.
Let's hear it.
Hohenheim I don't believe is justified for not being present emotionally for his kids. I don't think his trauma justifies that response. I don't think anyone's trauma justifies that response. It explains that response, and that's fair. I don't think that makes him a shit person. And in fact, I think him being able to do the things he did in defiance of that extreme trauma is inspirational. It's amazing. But that doesn't change the fact that he did not treat his kids with the basic respect that they deserved. And I'm not saying he was explicitly disrespectful. He didn't beat his kids or anything, but they did deserve his attention. I'm saying they deserved his attention and emotional support, and he neglected them directly. And if your argument is that it's because of trauma and no other extraneous factors, that's not a justification. That makes him a bad dad.
There were other factors, not only his trauma, but what he had to do to further save his country. And not only that, but I hear you. I just disagree. I think that it is a justification.
How is that fair, though? Because lots of people experience trauma. That was kind of the point of the show, that lots of people experience trauma, but the job isn't to try to justify the trauma. The job is to overcome it. And if you can't, that means you're harming people, period.
Yeah, and that's real and realistic. Real. And I think that, okay, so. I
just don't see how you could defend him.
I guess, personally, it's not something, my parents were absent in my life. And as an adult, I look at the reasons why they were absent, and I understand, and I'm not mad. So that's why I'm like, I think it does justify sometimes. People are only human. Having a child doesn't change. We like to think that it changes who you are, but it really doesn't. It just makes everything that you're going through harder because now you have to consider the life that you brought into this world for whatever reason. Like,
so it does change your life.
It changes your life, but it doesn't change who you are. I mean, it does sometimes. Everybody's different, but I think it's realistic. Like for me, when I had a child, it changed a lot of things for me, but it made me going through depression, anxiety, and panic way harder. In fact, it was really hard for me to have a good relationship with my son, who was just a baby at the time, but to actually care about being present with him even as a baby, because I was going through my own stuff. His father had to pick up my slack because I was going through my own mental health shit. And that's the that is the reality for a lot of parents. When you're going through your own mental health issues, it is extremely hard, if not sometimes impossible, to be able to be present and be there and care about your child in those moments. Not that I don't care about my child, but in those moments, I ain't giving a shit about nothing but the panic that I'm feeling through my body. So when I take that into consideration, I guess I'm applying my own circumstance to Hohenheim. I'm like, I don't think it's that bad. Yeah, he did fuck up. Yeah, he wasn't there. Yeah, he did hurt them. But like, they need to get the fuck over it when they get older. As children, I understand they're hurt. But like, as you get older, you're like, hey, my dad kind of like has like half a country of souls inside of him and is immortal and doesn't want to grow to see us die. So he's trying to be human and he feels like a monster. So he doesn't, that's what prevented him from getting close. And then he had to save the country. I feel like you should be a little fucking understanding when you get older of what your parents going through.
I think there's a compromise of perspectives here. I think on the one hand, you're right. Okay. Again, to be clear, Ed and Al had very different attitudes, and I think in some ways they were skewed. I think the anger that at least one of them felt was unjustified because, again, like you said, while they were kids, that anger made sense. But once you understand, it's like terrible. Get over it. But at the same time, Hohenheim, get the fuck over it. You have kids. I'm sorry, like it doesn't change anything.
Do you think that's like? Do you think that's realistic? Get the fuck over it. You have kids.
In the same way. So
my argument is that's not that realistic. That's not what a lot of people do.
We're not arguing realistic. We're arguing standards. Standards are almost never realistic, and that's fair. If they're not realistic and they can never be achieved realistically, then we have to change those standards. And I think in that respect, you're fair. Yeah. But we do see in the show that people realistically do that. So Hohenheim realistically.
I mean, nobody went through what Hohenheim went through, but okay.
Sure, except for father. And he was fucked up. And Hohenheim, by contrast, was an amazing person. And in fact, what's surprising to me is that he was an amazing person in almost every regard except parentage.
Yeah.
That's what I find ridiculous.
Which is why I'm kind of giving him a pass here.
I don't give him a pass. As a person, he's got a pass.
I feel like
he's got a pass as a person.
Yeah,
as a parent, no, he's not a good parent.
He's not a good parent, but I don't think he's a bad parent. I think if on the spectrum, I think he's more good than bad. I think it's a spectrum.
Of course,
you have,
it's a spectrum.
Phenomenal parents, great parents, like blah 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 blah, good parents, decent parents, not so good parents, bad parents, terrible parents, shouldn't even been a parent. Like.
What were you saying, Bryson? I want to hear this.
I was just listening. I was
sorry, we're in a garage.
In my mind, I'm like, yo, we should just probably move forward because it doesn't seem like anyone's coming to common ground.
Well, that's our job, Bryson. We're supposed to go around in circles for an hour and then call it an episode.
That's funny.
So, okay, let's talk about different.
Grisha.
Grisha. Let's talk about, because we're gonna get back to Hohenheim, but let's talk about other dads to find some perspective. Grisha, is he a good dad? I think this requires two different perspectives.
I would see him on the list too when I was looking. He was on the list. Yeah, he was on that list.
He is comically bad for a specific reason.
Yeah,
a specific scene, I should say, he's like a great dad. He's so good. He's so happy. And then randomly, he is sticking a needle into his son in the fucking woods, all crazy, eyes crazy. And his son's like, Dad, don't fucking do this. What are you doing?
Why did he do that to him again?
Okay.
Couldn't
Spoilers.
he have done it to anyone else, though?
Spoilers. That's the thing. Like, he felt like, well, this is so, okay.
Yeah,
so
why his son?
Because
why his own blood?
Later on, there's like a flashback for that scene where there's this side character. He's the one, well, it doesn't matter who he is. He's a side character, and he actually saw Grisha walking into the forest with his son.
Yeah,
and he was like, hey, like, what are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. There was this line of dialogue where Grisha's like, dude, don't worry, this is my son.
Yeah, I remember that.
He's gonna be good. So Grisha obviously has this sense of pride in his bloodline. He's like, hey, the Jaegers, we good. So I'm about to stab my child with this serum and make him turn into, like, he passed on his responsibilities to his son.
Straight.
When he could have gave it to another adult.
I have a question for you. So, are you gonna defend this? What's the word for this? This
atrocity.
Yeah, of an act. Stop
consider his circumstances.
Just stop it. Oh, okay.
Let's consider his circumstances.
This is I think this is this is different on the spectrum, right? So you have one father who was absent as a father, not the greatest,
fair.
absent as a father, and another one like, I'm going to induce suffering in your life. I'm not just gonna be distant with my problems.
Except,
Hohenheim was distant with his problems, and which caused different kinds of problems, but Ed and Al were like phenomenal human beings, despite what Hohenheim had put them through. They were empathetic. They were overly empathetic. In fact,
that's not his. He didn't cause that.
But he didn't cause detriment to their lives. He was absent as a parent, but where was they had daddy issues. But not the worst.
Has daddy issues.
Oh yeah, but because of something significantly worse is what I'm saying.
He has mommy issues, if we're honest.
I don't think you can defend what his dad did.
Oh no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Gershon, no, I'm not. Yeah. I'm saying that's way worse than what Hohenheim did.
Can I'm gonna propose that Grisha was not distant emotionally from his kid for the majority of his life. Yeah, he had some secrets, but he never made that a problem for his kids. He was always there. He provided. He was important to the community. His son looked up to him, and in a somewhat fucked up way, he even supported his son's hobbies and dreams. I want to be a part of the Scouts. Yeah, son. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, he knew. And to be fair, Aaron was a fucking psychopath. Okay, like an empathetic one,
like his daddy,
like his fucking daddy. But and that's the thing, because I love Grisha. Like, just like Hohenheim, I feel so bad for Grisha. That episode when they're on the wall and he's watching all of his people die and his wife die because his son snitched on him, the way they did that whole scene, like, I was in tears. I was so sad. Like, it was very epic. All the pain in Grisha's eyes. Like, I love Grisha and I feel so bad for him. But, you know,
but then
why give that to your son?
He just gave it to his own blood.
Yeah, he gave it to his own blood.
Because...
Why?
That guy that helped Grisha found Grisha. Why couldn't Grisha do the same thing?
He was dope. The guy that helped him. You tell me
there was no other person. What about fucking Levi? Where was Levi?
Wait.
How old is Levi?
Hold on.
Way older
I don't
than
know.
Aaron.
What's up?
His son was extremely intelligent. Would you say he knew that? What's his fuck? Zeke. Would you say he knew his son was actually decently intelligent?
Zeke.
He was involved in his son's life. Obviously not every part, but would you say he knew that?
Maybe
I don't
he
know.
did.
I honestly couldn't
That's
tell.
fair.
We know that.
But are you trying to defend him?
No, I'm trying to argue that. So Zeke was very capable at a young age.
Because this makes me think of like Minato. I'm like, he did that to Naruto because he knew he's from the Uzumaki clan and he could handle it.
But
I'm just like, if that's what you're going, I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah.
Well, it is essentially because I don't know that he would have. There's a car pulling up, and so the
It's
sound.
Anna.
I would say that he did know to some capacity. It was when his son said, "Hey, I'm going to join the Scouts." I think that was when he was like, "My son would be the good."
I don't think
option
so,
for
But
this."
because
then again, that's a stretch too because kids always say things and that all changes with age.
Yeah, and Zeke was putting his ideals, Grisha was putting his ideals into Zeke, and then Zeke snitched. So I think he was planning on doing it to Zeke first.
Yeah, he was. Oh, that's true.
So it was like, my son is the ticket, my son is the key.
Right.
Was it because he could control him? Like, what is the idea there that he imbued a philosophy into? Okay, he's a bad dad. All right, I tried to find some way.
You can't.
He went through some shit, but like, I don't know. He could have done anybody. He chose
Anybody
a fucking
else.
child.
He was gonna choose his first child too.
One option was because his son was going to the Scouts, but he could have chosen anyone to go into the Scouts, and he's like, but my son
He
would
could have
be
even
good
chose
at it.
Mikasa, who was way more capable than Eren, clearly at like combat. You know, she was.
What the actual fuck, Grisha? What are you
Not a great
doing?
dad.
So he's a bad dad.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Minato. That's another question though. If Grisha's a bad dad, why is Minato a good one?
Do we not need to talk about how he was taking care of his family prior to everything?
Okay,
How
yeah.
him and his
For like a
wife.
day.
Well, that's
For
what
a
I'm
day.
saying. We don't have much to go off, but we do know that he
Grisha
was.
took care of Eren for like
13
all
years.
13 years.
Almost 13
Yeah,
years.
but then look what he did, though.
And look what
But
Minato did.
Minato actually did like pretty much the same thing. Like,
If not a little bit worse. Like a little bit
guess that-
worse. That Nine Tails fucked Naruto up.
Oh,
and
sorry.
only because Naruto had the strength of character did he overcome that. It wasn't
Right.
because his
The plot
dad did
armor.
Well,
it.
not only that,
Really?
he is from the Uzumaki clan, and I feel like that's why he did that.
That's
so
a
he
chakra
could have,
thing.
but yeah, so he
Oh,
would have
you're right,
survived it. But like, that's not taking into account any of like the He was just like, yeah, my son's gonna be good. What is with this like? What is with this dad's having like a? Okay, so and here's let me go back.
makes me
At
so
least
happy.
Hohenheim wasn't like, you know what? I'm just gonna tell my kids everything. They're gonna
No,
be
you
good.
can't. You
I'm gonna
can't.
have
Every
them
time
help
you
me.
try to bring
No,
up
it's true.
Hohenheim, it can't because
It's true because
Minato was
Hohenheim
dead.
could've-
Hohenheim was alive for how many
Hohenheim
years?
could have put that on his kids, but he chose not to. Which I'm not saying the alternative was. I'm saying that the alternative was better, actually.
Wow.
That it could have been
Except
a lot
it
worse.
didn't work. Ed and Al had
But
interest
it
in
could have
alchemy at a
been
very
worse.
early
But
age.
it could have been worse. It could have been worse.
Yeah, because of Ed and Al, not because of Hohenheim.
Right.
We see what happened with, Naruto. No, Naruto's a shit dad too. So what the
Naruto's
heck?
a shit
Naruto
dad.
actually
For
is a
the-
bad dad, though,
And
and
Eren would
he's
be a
aware of
terrible
that.
dad. So,
No, but Naruto is aware of that because he's the Hokage.
yeah,
Like,
and Ed is I'm assuming an amazing. He's got 2 kids with Winry, so I'm assuming that
probably a good dad.
out of all the children, Ed and Al kind of came out the best. You
Because
know,
he learned compassion at a very
early age.
early age, and he learned the differences between right and wrong and how to treat people even if you disagree with them. Hohenheim, while an amazing person and all of those things, he did something. Ed and Al did stuff that he never could have emotionally. They had a maturity that they worked on despite their circumstances. And that's my point. that in world is a realistic thing. Everyone went through shit, and I understand that Hohenheim went through shit. But that doesn't change the fact that the show shows you that you can overcome that. Envy, fucking, in some ways, maybe that's a bad argument.
he killed himself. No. Okay.
I'm dropping that. It's done. That's a dead argument.
I think what Brotherhood shows you is the differences in how people handle trauma. Not just the fact that you can overcome it, but the differences in how people handle trauma.
Right.
Because we brought up Hughes last time we talked about this, and Hughes is an amazing example of a parent done right, despite him being a product of war and having to kill tons of people.
Innocent people,
you know? And he was an amazing father. Not saying Hohenheim's a good dad. I just don't think he's a bad dad.
I think that he's a bad dad because he literally didn't dad enough. He didn't do the dad.
He didn't dad enough. That's pretty good. I would agree.
Then how could you say Minato's a bad dad?
Minato couldn't have been a good dad. He literally did not have the option to be a good dad.
Yeah, but now we're talking hypothetical.
Well, no. I mean, like, he literally didn't have the option.
Yeah, if he was
died.
the Hokage. Well, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
That's
he
what I
literally
mean,
didn't
yeah.
have the option.
He wasn't there for Naruto. Naruto didn't even know of his existence.
Yeah,
He's
so it's like,
essentially
how
not
can
his dad.
I feel
He
like he
didn't
shouldn't
even know
even be
that his
on
dad
the
was
list.
the Hokage.
Yeah, I feel like he almost can't
Fucked
even.
up is. I'm sorry.
I feel like he can't
Continue.
even be on the list because he didn't even have a.
Right.
No, because we had this conversation last time and Marissa brought up a good point. She said as soon as his woman was pregnant, he was a dad.
He was.
And he was taking care of her when she was very well. She was a happy woman.
Then he put a demon into his baby.
I feel like when you say it like that, it sounds so bad. But if you know the story, you're like, it kind of has to happen like that. He couldn't just put that demon in anyone else.
Yeah, he had to
He
choose
put that
his
demon in
fucking
Naruto's mom.
He had
man.
no arrangements beforehand.
No arrangements.
He knew that when she was pregnant and was giving birth, that she had the seal would loosen, and did nothing preemptively.
Like there was a chance that somebody was gonna try to pull the Nine Tails out of her. Like they knew.
He's the Hokage. Get on that shit. What are you talking about? Why are you putting it in your
He's the
fucking
Hokage.
kid?
He's not God.
Do you know why? Do you know why he did it though? Because he knew it could be done. Specifically because it had been done at the exact same time before with Gaara, where his mother, the fucking Kaze Kage, put a demon into his baby, and Minato's like, that's a good idea.
You know what? I'm gonna rewatch this Minato
What if
thing
Hohenheim
just so
would've
I
put
can
a third
so I
of
can
his
judge it
souls
fairly.
into each
I'm gonna rewatch it now just so I can be like, okay, why did he do this? Oh, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
no,
Okay,
I'm
not there
and then
for
I'm gonna be like, okay, that doesn't make sense. I need to rewatch it now.
Okay,
I'm
what
gonna
if
judge it.
Hohenheim put a third of his souls into each child?
He's straight
Okay,
up
then
like,
I'd be
I
like,
need
oh,
to.
he's a bad dad.
I need to spend more time with my kids. I need to relate with them more.
Stop.
I'm gonna put monsters into your
Stop bringing up
soul.
Hohenheim. You cannot defend him.
Hohenheim's amazing.
You're crazy as
decent
hell.
dad.
He's okay. He's not. But
Well,
Please put in the
I'm a
comments
parent, so.
how crazy this woman sounds. I just want to see the comments.
I'm
Hohenheim's dad
genuinely thinking about the idea of him being like, man, I wish I loved my kids more. I gotta put a bunch of my souls so they understand
hilarious.
me.
then I'd be like, he's a bad dad. But you know what he did? He was just like,
No, he was like, you hear that? That's silence because he did jack shit.
Oh wow. Well, on the list of bad dads,
Forgivable. Anyways.
one who truly is a bad dad, and there's no denying it, is what's his name, Bertina from Code Geass, or what's his
God.
name? He actually is a bad dad. He doesn't even care for his children.
yeah.
Yeah,
We'd actually
genuine-
like pin them against each other, if I believe. Like he did not care. He only cared about his philosophy and all that other stuff.
That's true.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's actually a pretty common theme throughout every one of the dads we're mentioning, except, and I'll admit, Hohenheim. I know you don't want to keep bringing up Hohenheim, but he's kind of like the linchpin for our whole argument. It's about the expectations that the parents have for their children because of the position they're in. Even Minato, who again was an amazing person. He made an incredible sacrifice. His son. He because of his position had to put expectations on his son that ruined that kid's life up to the point where Naruto was able to overcome that trauma.
Then I was like, his life was going to be ruined anyway because his parents were both dead. He wasn't going to have a good
Orphans do not have a happy time in this world.
Not in the ninja world.
Not in the ninja world. Even though it is shockingly common. Can we, as a side note, I had a point. We'll get back to it. But I want to talk about the third Hokage.
What about him?
Who is supposed to take care of Naruto.
Right.
And would... Can we discuss how genuinely terrible of a person he was?
Kakashi was literally a better dad, and he was just his teacher.
Yeah, the third Hokage, the old man. Yeah, you're right.
I think, didn't Minato, because, okay, so Jiraiya and the third Hokage and Kakashi, they're all kind of...
Iruma or Irika?
Yeah, they were all, I believe they were all people that Minato knew that would help Naruto with age. Like, that was in his mind. Like,
how about that third Hokage?
What about him?
He was in charge of taking care of Naruto, and he left Naruto to like an apartment by himself, lonely child.
He did a terrible job. He actually didn't do what he was supposed to do. And then on top of that, it's unfortunate, but he even died.
It's crazy because, like, would any of us in our right minds make any of the decisions he made? He was essentially the guardian of Naruto.
Jiraiya was more so that. Jiraiya actually did his part very well.
By happenstance. But that was... The third Hokage was commissioned to be the guardian of Naruto.
He wasn't.
And failed in every regard.
Why didn't he let him live with him? Like, that's not unrealistic.
Or adopt the fucker. Like, what the fuck?
He didn't even tell him his dad was the fourth Hokage. He was just like, yep, no parents.
Why did any of them do that? Like, why did it take so long for Naruto to know who his dad was? And why didn't Kakashi or even Jiraiya or what's his name?
Iruma?
Why didn't any of them take Naruto?
Everybody looked at Naruto like a fucking demon because he was, and nobody was like, yeah, it's because your dad, who was the fourth Hokage, saved everybody's life by putting a demon inside you because you're the chosen one. I felt like that would have been way better than just nothing.
Like, why didn't Kakashi take him in?
The only thing he did was tell everyone, hey, don't mention the fourth Hokage or the fact that he's the Nine Tails. Why? Because I don't want anyone to hate him. What the fuck?
Everybody hated him already.
It was, okay, the reason he cited was he's like, I don't want the parents telling their kids that he's the Nine Tails so that the kids don't grow up to hate him.
But then they did anyways because
of course they would. He's just a bad parent, a bad leader in general. We know his actual child, Asuma, and his grandson, Konohamaru. And
RIP, assuming.
He didn't treat them very well either. Like, he wasn't bad, but we know that there's some bad blood between the third Hokage and his son, and a little bit between him and his grandson.
Do we really, though? How much information? We don't know much about.
Not much. Yeah, but I know that they're not close.
Probably not because of the fact that the third Hokage is a Hokage.
Yeah, that kind of ruins your
As we currently see with Boruto, any Hokage there's no time you can spend with your children.
This is just like the conversation we had earlier about the doctor, you know? Does that make you a bad parent when you have responsibilities? Like, is it fair to say that people shouldn't be parents if they have strong community responsibilities? Like, they're always busy with saving people's lives or being a leader. Like, is it fair for them to
That's actually a good question. Is it fair?
It's not necessarily fair, but it is a job. It's like, you can't. It's not a question of should or should not. It's, if you're doing this, you have a moral responsibility to do this more than you do being a parent. But that doesn't give you a pass from parenthood. You've still damaged the child. That is still a life you have irreparably damaged.
Does the amount of damage matter, right? So we're talking about, I understand, but we're talking about, like, I'm not saying that, like, of course I'm not saying that the damage that a parent puts on the child in any way doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is do you think that it's somehow worth it? Like, if it's like, for instance, I know you don't want to bring it up, but Hohenheim, like, when I watch Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, I don't see daddy issues. I don't see characters that are lacking in anything.
What the
Bryson made a face.
What? Okay,
You said you don't see daddy.
No, I don't.
That was funny.
I see
Father
mommy
being the
issues.
main antagonist
Literally-
of the series.
Yeah, but like literally,
Right.
they have mommy issues, not daddy
That's a
issues.
good point.
Like,
That's a good point.
Ed doesn't like his father, but that's not the same as father issues. When you say father issues or mommy issues, it's you conduct yourself in a way that is related to the problems that you have with that parent, the trauma that you have, with that parent. Those are daddy issues or mommy issues. Like part of who you are is because of that trauma. I don't see daddy issues with them. I see mommy issues. You know, they lost their mom in a very traumatic way and they tried to bring her back from the dead. That's why they have mommy issues, because they tried to bring her back from the dead. So what I'm
Classic.
saying is, you know, what Hohenheim didn't really affect them in that negative of a way. They were literally just fucking fine as like 13-year-olds.
But that's you can't predict that. That's not something he predicted.
Yep.
That's something that it's the same with the Naruto thing. It's like, oh, his dad knew he would turn out okay. He didn't.
No, I'm not saying that they know, but I'm saying doesn't that matter? Like
The consequences?
being a parent who has strong responsibilities to your community, like the doctor scenario we talked about, or with being a Hokage, but still wanting to have a family, even though you know you're not going to be able to be there for your child as much as they want you to be, is that forgivable? Consciously.
But this is a sacrifice problem. This is a question of what are you willing to sacrifice for the greater good, and is it in fact the only option? I'm not arguing that Hohenheim should not have left. I'm not. I think that did damage, and I think that was a sacrifice he had to make. However, that wouldn't make him a worse father than a better father. I think all things considered, if he put the time in, like Hughes or like Minato, where Minato did take care of them during the pregnancy, that's worth something.
I'm pretty
Worth
sure
something,
Hohenheim took
not
care
the
of
same.
his wife during the pregnancy, but okay. Like
Sure, yeah,
that's
let's
not-
say that. Even that far, fine.
And then
Great.
you can't.
My
yeah.
point is, that's a sacrifice he had to take for the greater good. I'm willing to concede that. However, was that the only option? Why is it either or? He could have done better. He
No,
could
I
have
understand.
involved.
No, I understand. And I'm not even specifically talking about Hohenheim. I just mean in general. Like when we're talking about the Hokage scenario and the doctor scenario, let's put Hohenheim to the side as a Hokage, or as a doctor. You know, like is it forgivable for you to start a family knowing that you're not really going to be able to be there for your child as much as they want you to be, but you're a good parent, you
I
provide.
think that's irresponsible.
You think that's irresponsible?
In the
So you
same
think
way
that they
that if
shouldn't
you
have
know,
children?
if you know you have PTSD, or if you know you have schizophrenia, or if you know there's some shit that is irresolvable, I think it's irresponsible to take on that duty.
Right.
I really do. That's not fair. Or rather, no, it is fair, but I think emotions matter. I think your circumstances matter, and that doesn't change your role or your responsibility, but it does mean that things will happen regardless of the ideal. So while I don't think it's responsible for them to have kids, I do think it's forgivable in that way for them to go ahead and do it, because life is complicated. You fall in love with somebody and you're like, hey, maybe I can work through my issues. Maybe I can make this work because I want this so bad. And even though that's wrong, it is human. It's very real, and I think that's forgivable. It's the follow through that I have a hard time justifying.
I would go as even far to say that if you have a partner and you are somebody who has crazy amounts of responsibility and you know consciously that you're not going to be able to be there as much as a parent as your partner, I think it's even okay to be like, look, I'm not really going to be around as much as I can be. I have all these obligations. I'm saving lives. I'm doing a lot, but I really want to start a family with you. So I just and I'm not, and this is something that you should have discussions with your child about through their upbringing. Hey, I know I'm not here all the time. I know I'm not here as much as you need me to be, but I have this is my job and I'm saving lives. And when I'm here, I think that there is room. I think that you can be, this is a bold statement, I think that you can be somewhat of an absent parent and still be a good parent.
Do you know a perfect example of this? Hughes.
Uh,
Fucking Hughes.
Yeah, I
where
agree.
I almost guarantee, beat for beat, what you just described is exactly what he experienced.
Yes.
Where he's like, I'm not sure I can have a kid. I don't know if that'll affect them, but I love my wife and I love being with her, he had that conversation. I'm not going to be around as often. I'm not going to be there all the time. But when I am there, I'm going to give it my all. And even when I'm not there, I'm constantly going to be thinking about how to do better. And he did.
Yeah.
That is the job.
Yeah.
And I'm saying Hohenheim did not do that, as well as the other parents in the thing. Grisha's he's a different ballpark. But
It's a spectrum, people.
of course it's a spectrum, but that doesn't mean we're arguing responsibility, I feel. We're arguing how responsible were they and how well did they fulfill those responsibilities. I would say most of the parents on this list failed in their responsibilities in some ways, either out of necessity or out of inadequacy. And I'm arguing that Hohenheim failed in some aspects due to necessity and failed in other aspects due to inadequacy. And I'm judging him off of his inadequacy, not necessity.
I have a question.
Okay.
Who do you guys think is the worst anime dad?
Dude, there's
Like
it's
the
impossible
actual
to
number
know.
one worst.
Boy, I feel like that's so father. I don't know.
Oh, father?
No.
From Full
I don't-
Knocker's Brotherhood? No.
No.
Dude, father actually loved gluttony. I don't care what anybody says. He loved gluttony. Like, gluttony was like this stupid fat child, and he freaking loved him. After gluttony died, if you like go to the end of the episode, there he is recreating him because he likes him.
Yeah,
father's
he
not
might be a shitty person. Worst parent. That's I think there can be a strong argument for Bondrewd.
Who's that?
Bondrewd from Made in Abyss.
the movie we watched.
Oh, the guy in the all black.
Yes.
He might be one of the worst dads out there. God damn.
Huh, that is
I
an
mean,
interesting
dude,
one.
but he loved his children, and then just
Fuck,
like
it's so fucked
shoved
up.
them in, took them apart and shoved their vital organs in suitcases.
That means he didn't love him. I can't. He didn't love- you
But
don't
that's
love
the
him.
thing.
Spoilers.
That's the crazy part.
We
Gotta.
We'll flash
That's
spoiler
up to
warnings
you.
at the
What if
beginning
you
of
were
this
one of those
episode.
kids? Your
He
dad.
still loved the
They
kids still loved him though.
That's
called
the crazy
that's
part.
called they're
Manipulation.
brainwashed.
But
they're
Manipulation.
brainwashed.
They knew what was you're right, but
They
at
were
the same time
brainwashed.
he loved and cared for he knew everything about them. He learned their passions, their names,
That doesn't mean you love someone though. That just means you've studied someone or learned things
True.
about them.
but he gave them every consideration possible. He gave them he took
So now we're basing
specifically-
love off acts.
No, not necessarily. No. Yes and no. Acts with sentiment. So with the chick, right, where she was like all crazy. What's her name? Rukia or Prusha?
I don't remember her
Preshka?
name.
Preshka. Prushka?
Preshka, yeah.
Preshka. She was fucked up. She was fucked up, and they're like, we should just get rid of her. We should be done with this. And he's like, no. She went through a lot. I'm gonna help her.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give her a good life. She would have died otherwise. Now I understand that he still sees her as disposable, but because of his value system, he saw his goal just as valuable as human life. But that does not mean that he didn't value human life.
That's the crazy thing about love. It's a feeling. Love is a feeling.
I
It's
disagree with that sentiment.
No.
I strongly disagree.
What
with
is
that.
love to you?
Love is
Love
Let's
to me
define it.
is extremely broad, and I'm not arguing that weakens your point.
I'm not saying that it's not broad, but I'm saying that if like you
Love is a
could
feeling.
boil down to love being a feeling. I feel
don't
love.
agree.
Okay.
Love
well,
is a feeling.
My point is, I see.
Okay, I'm
Bryce
sorry.
is
Make your point.
I think that love can be a feeling, and that it is a feeling, partially, and that
Wait, if it's not a feeling, what is it? I want to hear what you were gonna say, Javin.
I think it's every stage. I think it is a feeling as well as an action, as well as a mentality, as well as an attitude. I think it is a way of living and every aspect of that way of living. I think love exists at every point of the human experience in some way. I know that makes it sound really vague, but what I specifically mean is if you're saying you love somebody, that can mean everything from a feeling to a series of actions and commitments you make. It's the whole thing, and it can mean any of them. So it is a feeling. Sorry, I guess
Yeah,
I
I was
shouldn't have
like-
been
I was
so-
like-
it is a feeling, but it is also a lot of different other things. So to say this person loved this person is in my mind, incoherent. It just
Well, yeah, you grow to love someone. You grow to have feelings for them.
like, what does it mean? Specify. Like, what does it mean that person loves?
I understand,
this
but like most of the time, human beings identify love as a feeling.
Okay,
You feel this type of thing for somebody, and usually we're like, oh, I love them. When you feel really strongly for somebody, unconditionally for somebody, usually we identify that feeling as love. And it's different. It's different across the board. Love is very much a perception thing, and how you love them is very much a perception thing. So it is individual. Bondrewd, we can't say that he didn't love those kids because of what he did, because he could have, like, that's like the fucked up thing. That's like really crazy. You can actually like feel like you love somebody, show acts of love, show feelings of love, show like do all the love languages, and then shove them in a suitcase
and use their bodies
to ward off the curses of the abyss.
Boy, that guy is fucked up. But the reason it's fucked up is because human life is more valuable than his aims. That a little girl's life is actually more important than getting to the bottom of the abyss.
So I know,
but
this
he
is
doesn't
like,
agree.
Sorry to cut you off. I know this is like a less extreme version, but it's like me spanking my child. The act of spanking is very like. I know it's just a spanking, and like I'm not trying to be like over dramatic about it, but someone look at me physically whooping my child as not an act of love, but I know that I love my child and I'm doing it for what I think is for his betterment.
That's why love is so nuanced. It's like,
yeah.
Oh, here's
complicated.
I guess here's what I mean. Nope, never mind. It's too hard.
I'm like somewhat making a case for Bondrewd, but at the same time, like Bondrewd is really
Bondrewd's shit. Bondrewd shit. He's such a bad dad.
He's a bad dad, but he's not shit. And he's kind of it's kind of like Grisha. He was like literally a good dad up until that point.
Shit? I just don't. There's no debate with me. You're gonna be like, he kills all these kids, but no, he's not shit though, because he loved them.
He's a shit person, but he's a very interesting character, full of complicated
He murders children.
And he keeps them amazingly up until the point.
Let's talk about Mother then.
Wait, Mother
from Promised Neverland. So she's not a dad, but I think the point still applies. She's
a piece of shit too.
So you argue that, but I don't actually think she had a choice. She does not have a choice.
You always have a choice.
She has a choice to die.
That's not true.
Yes.
That's not
she
true.
She not only has a choice to die, she also.
How do you think about this? Think about this. How can you even? How old she looks about what? Maybe early mid-30s. How can you even live that long with yourself after killing all these children for years and years and years?
Because
you realize how cold-hearted you have to turn.
Because that's human. Humans adjust and they adapt. It is not human to say that you would rather die than become a product of the system.
She became more cold-hearted over the years.
I agree, but it was all for survival, and that's what humans do.
Let's be fair. Right? Would those children have died whether she was there or not? Period.
Yes.
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Would they have died in a situation that was worse than what she provided? According to the show, she was the best farm. Mm-hmm. And the reason they specified why she was the best farm is because she raised smart kids, active kids, and specifically happy kids. Mm-hmm. No other farm was successfully doing this at the rate that she was. My point is, she knew she was going to die if she didn't. Mm-hmm. She knew that these kids were going to die if she didn't. And she knew that she was the best at what she did. And she was going to do the best she could.
Right.
Does that make her bad?
She's still a piece of shit to me.
Wow.
Doesn't she? What if, season 2 hasn't ended yet, but like, is she ever going to come back in the show?
I read the manga.
Spoilers, what happens? Is she still the same, or has she changed? Is she still trying to kill them at this point or something?
It's complicated.
I don't actually want to know.
Yeah, it's complicated.
I want to know because if she's still, even after they escape, is still trying to get them back, it's like, bro, now you really are a piece of shit. At this point, I would just be like, go, or whatever.
That's what's great about that manga in particular. It is complicated, Bryson. There's just a lot to consider.
For me, when it comes to stuff like that, I can't defend someone who does that.
And I'm not gonna lie. I've been playing devil's advocate. I actually do agree with you, Bryson. I think she is a bad parent, but specifically because of the reasons I stated with Hohenheim as well as the other parents. It's not an either or. And whenever people think of it as an either or, you're pushing your ideals onto your children, and that will kill them or harm them or destroy them. And that's the problem with Minato. That's the problem with Hohenheim. That's well, actually not so much Hohenheim, but in a similar way, Hohenheim, Grisha, Bondrewd, they put their ideals and expectations onto their kids, and it did irreparable damage. Emma, who is a character in that show, did not. She did not force
all of Mother's children are like.
Didn't she give them choices or something?
Awesome.
Huh?
They gave them a choice, right?
Who?
Emma, like
she did. Yeah. She gave them a choice, and she fought for her own ideals without forcing them on anybody. She actually worked with everybody included and found a way. She literally worked with what she had and found a way to do something that even Mother didn't consider a possibility. That makes Mother, in an unfortunate circumstance, nobody's omnipotent, nobody's perfect. I think Mother actually did behave the best she thought she could in that circumstance, but that doesn't give her a pass for being a parent. Emma behaved better than she did because she put her all into ensuring the best possible outcome. Mother lacked imagination in that regard. And so did Minato, so did Hohenheim, so did every fucking parent on this list, because even though it's unrealistic and I concede that, that's your fucking job. Be creative. Do it. Do the job. Otherwise, the consequence is purely this.
What if these characters were real and they were like, but we did have imagination, and they argued the other way?
I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
And I think that that's a very interesting thing to say, because I don't think that's something that some people can do it and some people can't do it. Like that's the world that we live in. Some people can. So it's all how we cope with what we've been through. So it's like I said earlier about like my parents, like they could have done way better. But like I'm not holding it against them because I know where they came from and I know that they're products of their environment. And instead of I'm not a product of my environment, but I'm not going to be like, well, you could have done better. I did. Like, that's not how I feel, because I don't think that's realistic.
That's fair.
Right.
But at the same time, I guess where I draw the line is when a parent uses that to put it on their kid.
But what if what if it's not conscious, though?
It doesn't matter. I don't think, because, look, let's think of this as an intentions versus consequences thing, right? We have good intentions and the consequences are bad. So you adjust your intentions to match positive consequences. Now, you could be crazy. You could be crazy and think that by mass murdering 1 million people, you are saving the world. If that is truly your reality and there is no possible way you can think any differently, unfortunately, you are matching your expectations to what you think the consequences are. But we're not trying to account for crazy people. We're trying to account for people who are somewhat sane, somewhat rational. I understand trauma makes you crazy.
I would argue that Hohenheim might be a little bit crazy.
He might be a little bit crazy, except he demonstrated several times that he was sane enough to take responsibility for the entire country, as well as the souls contained within him, as well as combat forces that were going to destroy him, forces that were personally relevant to him.
He seemed really sane.
I have do you think that the souls inside of him are more important than his children?
I think that.
Like, would you weigh that? Like, would you say that they were more important than children? Like, thousands of souls are more important than 2 souls?
Well, you could say that because remember what we said last time? He spoke to each of them directly and not even his own kids.
So again, this isn't either or. I don't think importance is the souls are more important or that the kids are more important.
Well,
what I'm arguing is possibilities. I'm arguing possibilities.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is Hohenheim genuinely did not consider the possibility that his children would grow up to be able to help him save the world. And yet they did. Minato didn't consider the possibility that there was an alternative, even though it is shown that you definitely have 1 million different ways of doing something. You cannot do that. Grisha, we haven't seen far enough into the show. We just don't know. But I would wager that there were other options. And again, I go back to Promised Neverland. the issue isn't who's more important than anyone else. In fact, that's the thesis of the show. Ray and Norman are like, okay, but we have to consider how to maximize our output. How are we going to save the most amount of people? That means we have to value some more than others. And Emma said, fuck that. No, I'm not going to think that way. I'm going to consider everyone equally important.
Yeah.
Right.
And yes, she did make a sacrifice, but that was after trying literally everything and even arguing, we're going back. I'm going to, nobody is losing. Nobody is being lost.
Yeah.
That is a philosophy that I think parents have to take, even if they can't live up to it. And I would argue that these parents, instead of thinking that way, they argued the way you said, what's more important, my kids or the country? I got to choose country.
Yeah.
Fuck my kids.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
I don't think.
But I don't think they. See, I don't think it was conscious. I don't think that they were like, I'm gonna choose the country over my kids. I think it was just something that happens because as a parent, like I said, you don't just having a baby doesn't just change who you are. It doesn't. It does sometimes, and I'm not saying.
Wait, it does for some people though. I feel
it
like
does for some people.
Yeah.
But it does in some ways, and it does in some. It only changes you in certain types of ways.
I feel like you could just be speaking for yourself though. Because I've heard other people tell me otherwise.
Like that having a child changes them?
Yes.
It can for some people, but for a lot of people it doesn't.
It's kind of like the
How would you
adoption
know
thing.
that, though?
It's like,
Because I had postpartum depression and I was able
but I
to
feel like
talk
you're
to,
just
like, a lot
speaking
of
for
women.
yourself though.
I think that there are a large percentage of women out there that have a baby and don't feel any differently about.
But it could be the other way around also.
Oh, I know that there are women out there that it has changed, but and women and men. But we see it though. Like we see people literally not acting any different. Like people don't just get over their anger issues. People don't just get over their depression. People don't just get over their panic and put their children first before any of their problems and their trauma.
Yeah, but that
doesn't happen.
One way though. Like, I'm pretty sure if you have PTSD when you have a kid, you'll still have PTSD.
That's what I'm saying.
But but it could still. There's other aspects of this person that could change.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I'm saying that when it comes to specifically handling trauma and making things conscious that would otherwise be unconscious because you have children, like realistically, that just doesn't happen all the time.
Right.
And I have a lot of consideration for. And there's a spectrum, right? Like, I'm not like, oh, like you're traumatized, so you beat your children. Like, oh, it's okay because you're traumatized. Like, no. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's a spectrum and each case is different. And in Hohenheim's case, I'm like, hey, could have been worse. Not that bad.
well,
You're
okay.
crazy.
We're unfortunately out of time. I just want to propose one more question. To what extent does trauma affect your ability to have free will? Because I think we've all essentially argued different facets of that argument. How much does your own ideals, does your desire, does your stuff, how much does it affect your free will and therefore your responsibility to others?
You said how much does trauma
how much does trauma affect your free will? Because it's like I didn't have a choice. I felt like
you
a monster.
always have a choice. You
That's
will
not
always
true.
have.
That's not always
we
true.
know that trauma actually does physically affect your brain, and it makes processing any experience that you have in your life different. Some people have more panic. Some people are more prone to depression. Like it changes the way your brain functions depending on your level of trauma. Because of trauma, some people are actually probably incapable of doing certain things, and they act. And it's not an excuse; it's a reason why. But I take those reasons into consideration when I make judgment, when I pass judgment on people.
So
that's what I'm saying.
Unfortunately, none of us have come to a resolution, and we're not going to because we have different philosophies. But I'm curious to hear about your guys' philosophies.
That's fair, yeah.
Who is a bad parent? Who is not? What makes a bad parent? And did Grisha do the right thing? That's what I want to know. Was Bondrewd actually a stellar dad? Tell us in the comments. Thanks for coming by.
Till next time.
Till next time. Bye.